Donald Trump weighs in on Roseanne Barr's racism. Are we truly surprised? But besides being consistent, is this the latest piece of his electoral strategy? The show Pose launches today on FX with the largest transgender cast in history. So where are we on trans issues overall in the U.S.? And besides being groundbreaking, is the program any good? All of that plus our hot tea on today's The Last Sip. Come sip our tea. Welcome to The Last Sip. We're thrilled to be back with you in studio this week after the holiday last week, but the news isn't giving us a break. The ACLU revealed that the U.S. Customs and Border Control has lost over 1,500 children, with many likely turned over to child traffickers in de facto slavery. The president, in cracking form, canceled the North Korea summit and then scrambled to get it back on again and in a similar Mario Brothers move, imposed tariffs, i.e. taxes, on products from the European Union, Canada, and Mexico after delaying them earlier this month. As if that weren't enough, Roseanne Barr accused Ambien of fueling her racist tweets, which got her literally canceled at ABC, and Kim Kardashian turned up at the White House in funeral wear to discuss prison reform with Donald Trump. So there's a lot going on. Our first sip today with Tiffany Cross of The Beat takes on the possible 2018 electoral politics behind many of these headlines. On to the first sip. From the outside, the Trump administration seemed to thrash about last week with a string of bad headlines, from the 1,500 migrant children who seemingly disappeared to the on-again, off-again, and on-again North Korea summit to wading into the culture wars on the side of Roseanne Barr. Are these part of a possible 2018 electoral strategy to hold on to both houses of Congress? Here to discuss that is D.C. Master Tea Leaf reader Tiffany Cross, who produces a daily digital newsletter consumed by Capitol insiders called The Beat, and she is the co-host of a podcast of the same name. Tiffany, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
It seems to me that there's not necessarily a totally desultory method to all of the moves that we've seen in Trump this week. That from the intervention to the Roseanne, which puts him smack dab in the culture wars, which keeps him in that story, to slapping tariffs on foreign powers, which makes him look tough on trade, as he said before, that he wanted to do before, to this on-again, off-again with North Korea, that one of the things that all of this does is it keeps him engaged with his base.
I don't know that he necessarily wants to keep his base engaged in 2018 midterms. He, at his last rally in Nashville, he made a joke about it when he was saying voting in 2018 is just as important as voting in 2016, which of course it is. But he always reads these speeches like it's his first time he's ever read them. And as soon as he said that, he said, well, I don't know about that. Who in the hell wrote that line? He actually almost invited his base to not vote in 2018. And I think it's really a problem because he doesn't understand how important Congress is to getting his agenda done. And on many things in his agenda, particularly around these tariffs, the party is not with him. So a lot of the Republicans in his base, House Speaker Paul Ryan, Senator Orrin Hatch, these are people who have strayed from him on some of these policies.
And he's obsessed in this investigation for a whole host of reasons. And one of the things that Rudy Giuliani said earlier this week is that, look, ultimately, if this goes to impeachment, which was interesting because it seemed as if he had an idea when he said it that it could be, that this ultimately is going to go into the court of public opinion. And so if they believe that they're running a PR campaign right now, not an electoral campaign, as you indicate might be at work, then all of this is a part of the distraction.
Well, I'm not so sure that they're running a PR campaign. I mean, I've done PR, so if they're trying to run a PR campaign, they're doing it horribly. They can never stay in front of their own messaging because they have a principal who will stray from the message at every time. Rudy Giuliani even acknowledged that he hasn't spoken to the president in a couple of weeks, despite him appearing on media frequently. I don't know who's going to tell him he's getting ghosted, but it certainly looks like that. And in his base, look, you and I get paid to consume the minutia of all of this all day. But for the average American out there who's just dropping kids off at work and going grocery shopping and paying their mortgage, they're not paying attention to, they can't tell you, who Papadopoulos is or what the latest in the Russia investigation is.
Right.
And so when they hear him discredit the FBI, all of a sudden these Blue Lives Matter people, they are not a fan of law enforcement. They're not a fan of the FBI, and they
Right.
have started to think maybe there is a deep state, and he's brilliant at that.
Part of that, though, the part of that dumbing down is a part of that distract. It's a judgment call, right, on whether or not these are actually this is incompetence or it's strategic. Who knows?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
I think it's both incompetence and strategic. I think he has been brilliant his entire career about driving a narrative, even
Yeah.
about his own personal wealth, about impersonating his own publicist, his alter ego, Barron, who he used to talk about. So, yeah, I think there is something about driving his narrative, but I also think there is just some incompetence, not only at the top, but throughout his entire administration.
Given where you sit and just sitting at the crossroads with so many information points and the fact that you put out daily information in the Capitol, I'm wondering what your sense is of that, where we are in 2018 elections and what you're hearing.
So I think the House is certainly in play. I think Democrats do have a chance to take the House, and I'm an optimist, so I think the Senate is in play as well.
We will end on your note of optimism. Thank you for joining us. Your optimistic voice is welcome on this program at any time, and it's clear to everybody who hears from you why everybody in Washington listens to you every day, all the time. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much, and I'd love to come back. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. We'll be right back. With the launch of Pose this week, and with figures like Laverne Cox, Janet Mock, and yes, even Caitlyn Jenner at the highest levels of visibility in national life, we would seem to be at an amazing breakthrough moment for the 1.5 million trans people in the United States. But at the same time, the Trump administration has announced a ban on trans soldiers in the military, is considering denying the equal treatment of trans people in healthcare, and has dismissed through Betsy DeVos's Education Department complaints of discrimination against trans students in schools across the country. And that's just the beginning of the backlash list. Joining us to help give a sense of where we are exactly on the equality of trans people in the United States is Raquel Willis, national organizer at the Transgender Law Center. Raquel, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Amara.
It seems as if we are at a dichotomy moment here, and I just wanted to hear you talk a little bit about that, where on the one hand, Pose is launching, it's terribly exciting, it's historic, but we also are at a moment of intense backlash and even violence against trans people in the United States. And so I'm wondering how you are seeing things from where you sit.
Definitely. I'm so excited to see Pose happening and really just in general to see more of our narratives in the media and on TV. Thinking about shows like Star on Fox, right, with Amaya Scott, and of course Orange is the New Black has been on for a few years. So there's so many opportunities opening up for particularly trans women of color on the screens, right? And that's exciting. But of course, with all of that excitement and this burst of visibility, the fight still goes on in our day-to-day lives. And so that visibility has really lifted the veil on really some of the deep-seated issues with how trans people and gender nonconforming people in general are navigating in the United States.
What do you see as some of those key issues that you mentioned for trans people and gender nonconforming people right now in the United States?
We have a president now, Trump, and an administration that is being very clear about their disinterest in advocating for trans people and keeping us protected. And so we've seen with the Department of Education really trying to rescind a guidance that would protect trans students from the Obama era. We are also, of course, seeing the attack on trans people in the military. And then also something that I think is really touching everyone is the issue around trying to push this license to discriminate so that people can discriminate against trans people in healthcare.
Also at the Transgender Law Center, how are you all pushing back against some of these new administrative moves across the board and also at the state level? And how does national organizing fit back into that pushback?
So Transgender Law Center has always focused on impact litigation. And so targeting cases that would really push the needle on how trans people are protected in the legal sphere. Within the last 5 years, we have really seen also an importance in pushing resources and power to communities through organizing. And so I've been so grateful to be a part of a very powerful organizing team. And so through our projects like TLC at Song, which is working with Southerners on new ground around money bail and touching the lives of trans people who have been incarcerated and haven't been able to get out of those cages. And also work through an amazing project called the Black LGBTQ Migrant Project, which was started by Ola Osaze, who is also one of our amazing organizers, really targeting Black migrants.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and for everything that you do to help make the dream of America a reality. For more information about the Transgender Law Center and the full range of issues we discussed here with Raquel, visit www.thelastSIP.org and click on How to Help. We'll be right back. A policy which exemplifies growing national administrative prejudice against trans people in the United States is President Trump's decision to ban trans men and women from serving in the military. 1 out of 5 trans people serve in the military. That's twice the national average. So the president could be shooting our armed services in the foot. Here to talk about the personal impact of that discriminatory move is Caden Davis, who serves in the Florida Army National Guard. Caden recently wrote about his experiences in Time magazine. Caden, welcome to the program, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Why you decided to join the military and what your motivations were?
Absolutely. I come from a family of service members, and I do have plans of going to college, so that's why I opted to join the National Guard instead of going active duty. I feel a strong sense of patriotism. A lot of my brothers and sisters in arms also feel. And that's really the foundation of why I chose to enlist.
Mm-hmm. Where were you when you heard the news of President Trump's decision to implement the ban against trans men and women serving in the military?
I was actually at home. I just come home from a mission that we had done up in D.C., and I remember being on my couch, and a close friend of mine had texted me and told me and was sort of beside herself. And so I just remember going through and looking at it and reading the tweets and receiving the news for myself for the first time. And I was just in a state of shock and disbelief.
And to be clear, the ban actually, if it's implemented, would mean that trans people that are serving in the military, even those who are serving on the front lines, which is one of the reasons why we hear that the Joint Chiefs were against the ban, is because that they're actually people serving in active war zones across the United States who are trans, and they would have to be pulled out of the military. But you would have to leave the United States Armed Forces. It's not a ban on people entering. It's an active discriminatory push outward, correct?
Correct. Yes. So for me, I've been in the military for 4 years now, and hearing that news, for me, like I've considered making the military a career, going a full 20, possibly more than 20 years. I really enjoyed my time serving thus far, and so hearing that, it sort of set my entire career plan off track, and it left me grasping at straws because nobody wants to be fired on the principle of something that it's a composition of who they are as a person. It's comparing apples to oranges. A doctor wouldn't be fired from his practice for his religious preference or something that has nothing to do with his merit on the job.
You know, you have absolutely no control over this decision by, someone, albeit the commander-in-chief, to tell you to leave the military.
Absolutely. And as I said before, I just come back home. I was recently home from a mission that we had done in the D.C. area, which pertains directly to defending that particular area, which is where the president is. And he is my boss in a sense, because I am in the armed forces. So to hear that personal attack coming from somebody who is, I'm supposed to protect and hold, to such revere, it really, really hit home. And I was overcome with a sense of powerlessness, of almost worthlessness, because I take great pride in my service thus far.
What do you think the fellow soldiers who are not trans that you serve with think of this ban?
I'm very fortunate to have a lot of support in my unit, to include my chain of command, which isn't the case for everybody. So I'm really blessed in that regard. I've gotten a lot of sympathy, a lot of people willing to go to bat for me, and a lot of people who are equally as upset by this trans service member ban. So, like I said, I think that a lot of people are sort of taken off guard because it's an attack on something that doesn't have anything to do with your merit as a soldier.
Besides using your voice, which you're speaking out and being very public in Time Magazine and elsewhere about your service, how do you think is the most effective way to respond to something that you believe as a citizen, right outside of being a soldier, is wrong?
I'm going to keep excelling at my job and keep being the good soldier that I know that I'm capable of being and have a proven track record of being. And in addition to that, to continue fighting by using my voice, and because in essence, that's the most surefire way to affect positive change, and to do it in a respectful way, but to do it in a firm way, and to continue voicing these concerns.
Mm-hmm. Well, the good news is that there have been several federal judges that have disagreed with President Trump's ability and authority to be able to discriminate against trans people. So for now, as long as those injunctions hold and this works its way through the courts, you can continue to serve. We're going to end with that positive news because the Constitution that you work to defend believes in balance of power, and balance of power is at work right now. And we also are just going to end with your positivity of continuing to serve your country and do the best that you can. And we wish you all the best in continuing to do that, and really appreciate your joining us and telling us your story.
No problem. Thank you so much.
For more information about the Trump ban on trans military service and how to help, please visit www.thelastSIP.org and click on How to Help. We'll be right back. Pose, a new program on FX with the largest transgender cast in the history of television, premieres tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Co-produced by Ryan Murphy and Janet Mock, it chronicles the underground ball culture of the late 1980s and the way in which it overlapped the rise of hyperwealth in the United States. Now, with stars such as Kate Mara and Billy Porter, the show certainly has marquee names, but what does it actually say about where we are on trans people and entertainment? And more importantly, is it any good? I guess we'll just have to tune in tonight to see. Here to discuss that with us is the one, the only Patrick Riley, who is the all-knowing, all-seeing pop culture guru. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Amar. I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. So first off, when you heard that Pose was happening,
yes,
what'd you think?
You know,
Did you think train wreck or you thought success?
I thought when I first heard about this idea of a full trans cast, I was nervous about it, but I felt like it was time. Because we've seen sort of hints of the media try to embrace the intersectionality of LGBTQIA, but the trans population hasn't really been seen in the grandest way. You know, we've seen some great representations of it.
Always prostitutes.
You know, right. It's kind of the under the cut. You know,
Yeah.
Paris is Burning, for example,
Yeah.
those many years ago gave us sort of this look inside ballroom culture and
Yeah.
some of the challenges of our brothers and sisters. But at the same time, there's a fuller story out there. And so when I heard that this idea had made it to Hollywood and that it was in the hands of Ryan Murphy, that is the moment at which I began to think that this is going to be something special because he has been very good to the LGBTQIA set in Hollywood, not just with his storytelling, from Glee to Nip Tuck to the wonderful work he did with the Gianni Versace story,
It's fantastic.
the amazing work with O.J. Simpson, all of that. But I knew that he has a heart for the community. And so he had been doing a lot of work to integrate minorities and the disenfranchised and the marginalized into the Hollywood system. To hear that that was a template he was going to use for the trans community as well, which he has done with Pose, helped me to know that this was something, this is kind of like the Black Panther of the trans movement,
Right.
if you will,
Right.
because it's integrative.
Right, and also Janet is a part of it, right?
Janet Mock,
And Janet Mock
the
is like
iconic
Rotara.
Janet Mock.
Right,
yes.
and they've been very intentful about making sure that she's also front and center, like on the front page of the New York Times with him and other things. So I think that them together
Absolutely.
makes it. So one of the things that's important, oh, and by the way, I said something before, I was like, we're always portrayed as prostitutes. There's nothing wrong with sex work. I mean, people are going to text me, but we have a full range of things that we are.
There's more to the narrative.
Exactly.
And just even with Janet's inclusion in this project, she's
Yeah.
making sure that we're seeing relationships.
Right.
Not just sort of what it is about the challenges and the transitions in body and
Right.
in our families,
Right.
but actual romance and
Right.
what the complexity
Right.
of what that looks like.
Right, it's actually romance between one of the characters
Yes.
who is trans and a white wealthy boy who has a sort of a struggle inside of himself about
Absolutely.
his duties as a scion of an Upper East Side
And
family.
we meet his wife, and
Right.
we're able to
Right.
root for her, feel sorry for her,
Right.
sympathize, empathize, all of the things that we often don't get to see. We
Right.
get to see those lines crossed
Right.
in Pose FX in a way that I think that we're ready for.
Right.
Not
Yeah.
just good work for trans or good work for LGBT. It's good TV.
Right.
It's as good as Feud with the Betty
Right.
Davis,
Right.
Joan
Right.
Crawford bit. It's solid, exciting to entertainment, and it just so happens to be predominated by the trans community. I live for that.
The other thing as well is the fact that it seems like in that whole, people are like, what is allyship?
Yeah.
One of the things that Ryan Murphy has done is that he's actually used his power to actually provide a stage for other people. So it's not only him with other trans people and making it a trans cast, but I really think that him bringing in Janet and making sure that she's in the forefront
Yes.
of a lot of the press, and as you say, insisting on some of these behind the scenes things, that's about creating a broader palette for power, and that you don't see in Hollywood terribly often.
You don't see it because I've heard him say he not only wants them to work well in this utopia.
That's right.
He wants them to work everywhere.
Right.
Go down to Atlanta, work with Tyler Perry. Go
Right.
do wherever and work wherever. But this is going to be the foundation that really gets us all kind of integrated.
Right, and a new platform for all this new talent.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and
Thank
for
you
helping
for
to
having me.
elevate the conversation, but beyond just the fact that it's going to be good.
Yes.
Right, it's going to be good. We're going to like it.
Absolutely.
And that the fact that it is going to be an interesting program, but helping us sort of understand the way in which there's a broader way that it has an impact right now and why it's important and what it might do. So thank you for coming
you.
in. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And we can take we'll give you T2 just like Wendy Williams.
Okay, there you go. With that,
Exactly.
yeah.
Cheers. Oh yes.
Salud.
Salud. We need tequila.
There you go.
All right.
Yeah, I know.
Thanks for joining us. For more information about all things Pose, visit www.thelastsip.org and click on How to Help. And be sure to check out Patrick's book when it comes out soon. We'll be right back. The world of pop culture and politics seemed to merge together into one big show this week that at times felt downright circusy. Roseanne Barr tweeted out a late-night racist tweet insulting a former black counselor to the President of the United States by calling her a monkey. She was promptly fired by her black boss at ABC, blamed her outburst on the Ambien, and by week's end was playing the victim like racist picnic lady. Pusha T veered into racial politics by pushing out a photo of Drake in minstrel face, accusing him of never having done anything for black people. But like Janet Jackson, I'm asking what Pusha T has done for us lately. And on top of it all, Samantha Bee called Ivanka Trump a word which rhymes with hunt. She quickly apologized, but in the process showed that she certainly can sting. But the most surreal moment of politics and pop culture mashup this week was captured in a picture of Kim Kardashian dressed as if she had just buried somebody standing next to a beaming Donald Trump in the Oval Office who looked as if he enjoyed said burial. Now, Kardashian says that she was there to promote prison reform. Does Ava DuVernay know anything about it? Specifically in the case of Alice Marie Johnson, a woman who's in prison for life for a non-violent drug offense. To some, Kim's move seemed downright odd. Others praised it as an example of her ongoing charitable selflessness. But perhaps there's another reason. T.I. said on a radio program recently that Kanye is seriously planning on running for president, in which case Kim's move could be a bid to appeal to Trump's voters for a future presidential run. Something's up, though. We know that the Kardashians do very little without a plan. Either way, a Make Kanye West Great Again hat might just be coming soon to a store near you. That's all the time we have today. Thank you for joining us on The Last Sip. See you next week.